If you look at the world right now, Excellencies, I can tell you, just look at all the poor countries. Look at the countries which have poverty. There will be one thing in common. They cannot catch the white-collar criminals. They only end up putting petty criminals in jail. This is the biggest problem which our Prophet, peace be upon him, predicted almost 1,500 years ago. The developing world is poor not because they lack resources, because they cannot put full criminals in jail. There's a fact-eye panel report by Secretary General of the United Nations. According to this report, and this will shock all of you, that every year, $1.6 trillion leave the poor countries and end up in tax havens and in the developed world. $1.6 trillion according to the fact-eye panel report of the UN Secretary General. Just imagine what is going on. Poor countries are being robbed simply because we cannot put the powerful criminals in jail. We cannot bring them under the rule of law. This is what our Prophet predicted. And this was the state of Medina where he set up this system of rule of law, no one above. And two of the first four Khalifas, two of the first four heads of state of Medina ended up in court of law. And one of the most revered and respected figures of Islam, who was the fourth Khalifa, he loses a case against a Jewish citizen because the judge refused to accept the testimony of his son. This was the justice system there, which laid the foundation of this great civilization. So what does it show? Number one, that minorities were equal citizens. They were equal citizens in front of law. There was no discrimination. Secondly, it shows that a common citizen could win a case against the head of state. No one was above law. This is 600 years before the Magna Carta was signed in England, which was the beginning of the democratic struggle of Britain. And it took them years before they could actually bring their head of state under the rule of law. This is what happened in the state of Medina. It was ahead of its time. And then it was the first welfare state in the history of mankind. Compassion, humanity. It was a state which took care of its weak, its orphans, its widows, its poor people. It was the first time pensions were introduced in the state of Medina. They took care of the old people. A compassionate state. A state where they wanted to please the Almighty. How do you please the Almighty Allah? By looking after His human beings, especially the weak. This is what happened in the state of Medina. And today, I feel sad whenever I go to Scandinavia. I see what a welfare state should be in all over the Muslim world. Look at humanity there. Look at the way they look after the weak. In fact, sometimes I'm sad because they look after the animals better than some of us look after our human beings. And remember, He's Rahmatul Alameen, so whoever listened to His message, whichever human community will prosper. It doesn't matter because for all humanity, He brought the message of mercy. If you look at Switzerland, in the rule of law index, Switzerland is 99%. 99%. So with hardly any resources, it is one of the most prosperous countries in the world. So as I said, anyone who goes by the model of Medina will prosper. And then, quest for knowledge. Foreign Minister Wang Yi, you'd be surprised, one of our prophets saying, He said, even if you have to go to China to learn and quest for knowledge, you must go there. Now, first, China at that time was center of knowledge, but it meant even risking your life. Going from, at that time, Arabia to China meant you might not come back. So that was the quest of knowledge. You have to seek knowledge from cradle to grave. He sparked off this great knowledge revolution. For hundreds of years, the top scientists were Muslims because they thought quest for knowledge was a sacred duty. Look at the situation in the Muslim world today. How much do we have a quest for knowledge? And then we get so much, wherever you go, Muslims are, that our women are, we imprison our women have no rights. And sometimes, it almost seemed that the US invaded Afghanistan to liberate their women. There was no other reason except to liberate their women. Somehow our women are in prison. Let me just tell you that it was a revolutionary move by our Prophet that women were given inheritance rights. They were empowered. In Europe, even 100 years ago, the women barely got their inheritance rights. 1,500 years ago, women were given their rights. And no one seems to know this. And sadly, cultural issues are equated to our religion. We cannot explain, sometimes Western people say, they confuse culture with religion. I'm sad to say in Pakistan, we discovered 70% of our women do not get inheritance rights. So we have especially had to pass law to enforce that women must get their inheritance rights. This is 1,500 years later. And no one knows this. Slaves, honorable foreign ministers, nowhere in human history has this happened. That slaves became kings. The Mamluks were slaves who became kings in Egypt. In India, there was slave dynasty that became kings. Why? Because the Prophet said, treat your slaves as family members. Best to free them, if not, treat them as equal family members. So he was the greatest human being that ever stepped foot. There'll never be a human being like them. Anyone close to the Prophet became leaders. If you read the book, The Arab Conquest, everyone became a leader, whoever was near the Prophet. And our generations don't understand that, and neither have we been able to explain to anyone else. Let's not confuse Muslim imperialism with the 10 years of Prophet in Medina. Let's not confuse that, because that was not what the Prophet preached, where the Muslims went all over the world conquering. It is not what the Prophet's, the whole revolution was of ideas. Honorable foreign ministers, one of the ideas of OIC is to protect Islamic values.
अहम तरीन खबरें अब एक क्लिक की दूरी पर। आपके पसंदीदा टॉक शोज हों या अहम मुल्की या गैर मुल्की शख्सियात की न्यूज कॉन्फ्रेंसेस, हर लम्हा बाखबर रहने के लिए सब्सक्राइब करें हमारा YouTube चैनल। मौसम की सूरत हाल हो या खेल के मैदान से खबरें, अपने मोबाइल फोन से मुल्की और बैनुल अक़वामी अहम खबरों तक रसाई के लिए डाउनलोड कीजिए मोबाइल ऐप। बावसूख ज़राए से मुसद्दिका खबरों, तज्ज़ियों और तबसरों से मुस्तफ़ीद होने के लिए विजिट कीजिए पाकिस्तान की सबसे बड़ी न्यूज वेबसाइट www.arYnews.tv। इन सब के अलावा पाकिस्तान का सबसे बड़ा फेसबुक पेज हो, सबसे बड़ा न्यूज इंस्टाग्राम अकाउंट या फिर ट्विटर, ARY न्यूज पहुंचा रहा है खबरें सबसे पहले आप तक, ताकि आप रहें हर लम्हा बाखबर।